Hello and welcome into my latest live stream. Today, what's today? Today's the 25th of October, 2018. Hello everybody, got a little bit of a late start today, but we're getting there. We're getting there. Let's see, let's just flip that over here. So, we're continuing on from yesterday with this build. The customer does want to have the two 970 EVO M2 NVMe drives in RAID 0. So, we have already got the first one installed back behind there. We'll install the second one right there. And then we'll boot it up and get it configured and get Windows installed. That's the plan for today. How are you guys doing today? I hope everybody's well. Oh, excuse me. I think I need a Coke. That's what I need. I knew something was missing. And we are 6 days away from Halloween. I got a couple of Halloween-inspired shows coming up in the next few days. Probably hit those next week. I think will be Halloween week. Well, half of it anyway. And we'll do some, we'll have some fun. We'll do some education as we always do, and we'll add a little bit of fun like we always do. Ben DeCure says he's doing good. Let's say hello to my people in blue here. Geo, Sam, Thomas Carter, Nick Poverman, Ben DeCure, Alhaj Chapej, Radioactive, John FKS 1985, John Paul Bacon, Sterling 3371, Patrick Russo, Philip Moss, Reverend John O'Toole, Colin Hilton, Ian Scott Johnston, I think I got all of my wrenches called out. Platter Jockey, Michael C. Gear Slotsvik. Gear, I've got your information. I'll get your case badges out. I had another gentleman in Switzerland who, I guess he's not getting my emails, but I did get his address, and we'll get those case badges out probably over the weekend. I've got a bunch of envelopes to stuff. It gets pretty backed up pretty quickly here. So, yeah, let's do this. Let me move this out of the way. And there's so much to do, so much to do. Aspirin, that's what I need. Make my head go away. My headache, I mean. Or either way. All right, so I remember I put the Optane drive in one of these. I'm guessing this one, because it feels like it's already been opened. Yeah, that's got the old Optane. I asked the customer if he intended to order the Optane version of the motherboard, if that was a mistake. He said it was like only $8 more, and it didn't bother him. He did it on purpose. So Kelly Stewart says hello. Hi, Kelly. All right, so here's our other 1 terabyte 970 EVO. Obviously, this is something to be jealous of because those are about $400 a piece, a little shy of that. And you should be fortunate enough to buy one, let alone buy two, and put them in a RAID config. That's about as good as it's going to get with today's technology. So it's pretty cool. Obviously, if you can afford to do it, if speed is important to you, you really can't go any faster. This is pretty much it right here. I mean, there's always a way you could do something, I suppose, but this is pretty much attainable to anybody with the money. It doesn't require a whole lot of technical skill, and I'm going to demonstrate that to you here in this video today. Here we go. So that is in the M.2 slot there. And that's how easy it is to install. That's all there was to it. I'll pull the documentation out, and it's the same documentation the customer already has. but he'll have it twice. With the install done, oh, they're showing it at 277. Oh, the price has come down. Okay, so still, 277 times 2 is about, what is that, about $534 somewhere in there? 552, 554. Anyway, it's expensive. It's more money than I have. But I like doing the work. There's a deal this week. I don't get paid by Newegg. I'm not an affiliate of Newegg. I'm going to present this information to you as a courtesy. You can buy the ADATA 960 gig 2.5-inch solid state drive at Newegg today. Would anybody like to take a guess at the price? Remember, I say the price on these SSDs keeps falling. Well, last time I said it was around $124. It's cheaper than that right now this week at Newegg. Would anybody like to guess? I am going to copy the link and put it in the chat room for you guys. Let me just make sure the link works. Here, I'm going to show you. I am going to show you That's not what I want. I'm trying to add a device here. Let's see what happens. Oh, I see what it's doing. It's way up here. I don't want that. Let's remove that. Let's add. All right, this is going to look a little wonky. Here is what I was trying to point at right here. So this is from Newegg. This is the ADATA SU650. It's the 960 gig, which they're all the same size. It's just got a little more overhead. It's still a 1 terabyte drive, even though it says 960. And look at the price this week, $117.99, and the sale ends in 7 days. That's a really, really good price. I ordered 2 of them myself. So I wouldn't recommend something to you that that I wouldn't use myself. So I'm going to put a copy of the link here in the chat room. There you guys go. And that is a great deal. It's got a great warranty. Jeff Steed says, hello from Michigan. Hello, Jeff. John Thames says hello from Texas. Howdy from Texas. Lurgicus is there. Hello, James Baker Jr. Al McDonald. Hey guys, welcome in. Supernovi in the chat says, I should have waited. I bought mine for $121. Oh yeah, you would have saved $4, $3. Oh no. That'll almost pay for a tank of gas. A tank, I mean a gallon, maybe a lawnmower's tank. What am I saying? My God. Okay, let me get the video cable out here so we can get this thing fired up and get the RAID configured on those M.2 drives. Let's see, this will go here. I need a power cable. I have the keyboard and mouse still plugged in, that's good. Yeah, that's a heck of a deal. 1 terabyte. Solid state drive for $117, and it's not like if you don't use it, it's going to go bad. If anything, the price may go a little bit cheaper. I bought mine at $124. I've already used them all. I bought 2 more, like $120. I already used those. I was trying to have some in inventory in case a customer wanted to buy one, and the customers keep buying them from me. It's funny because I don't like to sell parts, but if I've got it here and I can sell it to the customer and get them in and out quick, as long as I make back what I paid for it, I'm fine. Not making much money that way. Okay, let's see if we can get this configured. I'm going to switch over to the other input. Here we go. So I'm up in the corner. Let's fire this up. And I need this other keyboard here. And this should be interesting. I've never configured this system with RAID before, this particular board. Remember, the only time I did it was on Thready, the Threadripper. I'm not getting any video. Here we go. Just takes a minute. All right, so somewhere in here, I should see the option. I should see both my M.2 drives. Let's take a look. Let's take a look in here. PC status, no. System, no. Full screen logo. Boot options, very good. We got both SSDs. Fast boot's disabled. We'll enable that a bit later, but for right now, we'll leave it off. You know, that's fine. All this is good. We're not doing anything with SATA. NVMe configuration. Here we go. Controller and drive bus. Okay, it recognizes the drives, but it's not giving us any options in there. AHCI is good. That's all SATA though. Where is my RAID for M2? Is it offered? Easy RAID. How about we start there? Hello? I got nothing. It's not an option. Does this board support RAID on the M2 drives? It may not. I don't know. I don't see anything else. I think the screen we want to be in is right here, but I don't know why that option is not available for me. Unless, like I said, unless it's SATA only. What would happen? So we don't have an off-board SATA. Yeah, that would be like a PCI Express card that had more SATA ports on it. An NVMe configuration doesn't offer us any options at all. Just verifies what we've got. They're both NVMe drives in NVMe mode, which is good. You know, we can go into SATA, but this is just the SATA controller, and we only have the option of the Intel RST or AHCI. So it may only support RAID through the SATA. Just want to take one more look in case I'm missing something. No, that looks fine. And that's fine. Maybe some folks in the chat have an answer for me. Because it doesn't seem to support it. I would have to open the manual. God forbid I do that. I'm going to leave it here in the BIOS for a minute. Let me take a quick break for a second. I will be right back in just a minute. Okay, let's go back here to this main camera. And let's take a look at the documentation with the board. Okay, so I've got the instructions. Where's my reading glasses? I know I'm gonna need those now. Last year, I could do with them or without them. It was a little harder without them. This year, I just need them now. It's not even getting to be an option for me. Surprised how quickly they're degrading. My eyes, my vision. Okay, so let's take a look for LEDs. Here we go. M.2 connectors. Please note that an M2 PCIe SSD cannot be used to create a RAID set with either an M2 SATA or SATA. To create a RAID array with an M2 PCIe SSD, you must set up the configuration in UEFI BIOS mode. Refer to Chapter 3, Configuring a RAID Set. Refer to Chapter 3, Configuring a RAID Set. UEFI RAID configuration. What other RAID? Using Easy RAID. Configuring the SATA controller mode. I don't want SATA, I want PCI Express. Configuring legacy RAID. Installing the RAID driver. No. Obtain memory. No. All right, here's what it says. Let's go back to the other screen. Here we go. I'm going to get rid of the camera so I can see the whole screen. Okay. It wants us to turn CSM mode off. Go to BIOS and set CSM support to disabled, which appears to be under the BIOS heading. Like they literally mean the BIOS. We're at the top. See, it says BIOS right there. Go to CSM support and turn it off. I don't know what CSM does. I'll be honest. I have no idea. Apparently, it's needed for RAID. That much I know. Certainly wasn't an option we had in BIOSes just a couple of years ago. It's a pretty new option. Let's save and exit so the BIOS will be altered with the CSM mode off. And we'll go back in, hit delete, and go back into the BIOS. Now, with CSM mode off, maybe the RAID, Easy RAID will be available? No, still not available. Let's keep going. What does it say next? After the system reboot, enter BIOS again, then enter Peripherals Intel Rapid Storage Technology submenu. Intel Rapid Storage Technology. Intel Rapid Storage Technology. I don't see it. Still nothing in the NVMe controller. Intel Rapid Storage Controller. Well, that says SATA and RST. That's Rapid Storage Technology. shows that option right below, well, on this, so the manual doesn't even show this TLS auth, whatever this is. Where this is, it shows Intel Rapid Storage Technology. So that's different than the book. Yeah, so that we don't have Intel Optane, that's not going to work. We can't even use that option. And it's SATA anyway, which has nothing to do with PCI Express, so that's clearly not where we need to be. And let's see what it says here. Under Intel Rapid Storage Technology menu, there is an option to create a RAID volume. I see all the other options. There's a screenshot in the book of the BIOS, and it shows an option in the BIOS that isn't there on my BIOS, but it's here in the screenshot in the book that clearly says Intel Rapid Storage Technology. It's not there. John Paul Bacon says, didn't you say a few days ago that the Samsung M2 weren't compatible with Intel RST? No, I said the Samsung Magician software doesn't work with Intel RST. But the Samsung Magician software doesn't work in RAID either, so it's redundant and irrelevant. We won't be using the Samsung Magician software in either case. So this is technical stuff, and I do make it sound very easy, but you need to really listen to what I'm telling you, or you're going to be confused. What else can I do? The BIOS against CSM, I did that already. Reboot? I just rebooted. What are you talking about? Unless I gotta shut it off. Yeah, I'm surprised Easy RAID's not been made available to me. I think I'm going to just power it off. And then with it off, I'm going to disconnect power from the power supply, and I'm going to hit the power button on the machine to just drain any remaining power. Now I'm going to plug it back in, hit the power switch to turn it back on. And then we're going to go back into the BIOS. And let's take a quick look in here. CSM is disabled. Easy RAID should work. I don't know why it doesn't work for me. Varujin Kalishtin has contributed $1. Thank you for your contribution. Let's see here. Yeah, NVMe is just not giving me any options here at all. It's just information. I guess we could turn XMP on. What if we turn Intel Rapid Storage Technology on? And let's go back to Classic. And then let's go back to Easy RAID. Still not going to work. Nope, doesn't do anything. I mean, we can go into the SATA mode and we can change. This isn't going to have any effect at all. You'll see. You guys don't listen to me. I keep saying it over and over and over, and you just keep repeating yourself. It's not that I'm not listening to you, it's that you're not listening to me. So I'm going to do this another time, just so you'll see this only affects the SATA ports. They're a completely different channel, different IRQ. It's a completely different. It's like telling me to wiggle my toe to make my pinky on my hand feel better. They're completely unrelated. So watch, we're going to go back over here to peripherals. I see Intel Rapid Storage Technology is there in the list now. Let's see if it lets me create a RAID. No. You see, it's for SATA only, guys. It's just for SATA. That's a SATA setting, but at least it shows that option now, which I didn't have before. But it's irrelevant because that's the wrong area. I want to configure a RAID on NVMe, not on SATA. And Easy RAID still isn't available because it's still looking at SATA. So that's just not going to work. We're still not offered any options there. So anyway, yes, I'm not going to leave that on because it's just pointless. None of this really matters anyway because we're not using anything SATA. You can adjust the SATA settings all day long. We're not plugged into SATA. You can change them to be anything you want. It has no impact because nothing's plugged in to SATA. What we're trying to do is get the RAID to be recognized for NVMe, and it doesn't seem to permit that, so it's a little frustrating. And the motherboard implies that it can be done, but nothing in the BIOS seems to permit it. So this is the price you pay when you want to have the latest and greatest and best. You will go through this sort of pain because it's an unusual configuration that apparently isn't tested very well. You know, it requires a certain song and dance ritual that if you don't do exactly right, simply isn't going to work. That's the best way I can explain it. I'm looking here, Easy RAID is still not coming up. 4G decoding, RGB fusion. Yeah, ain't happening. We updated the BIOS yesterday to the latest version of the BIOS. You guys can verify, right here's the BIOS version and the name of the board, and you can Google that and verify. You can even look at the date. This BIOS came out last month. You would think under NVMe configuration, which I've been into 6 times already, but apparently you guys aren't paying attention, but I'm going to do it again, so I really wish you would pay attention. It only contains information. It doesn't contain any options. It even says right at the top, NVMe controller and drive information. This is now the 6th time I've looked at it. And it's the same. It's like when you open the refrigerator, you go, I don't see it. You open the refrigerator again, I still don't see it. You open the refrigerator again, still don't see it. Keep opening the refrigerator. Let me know how that works out for you. Let me know if it suddenly appears. I'm frustrated. You're not helping. Please help. The BIOS date is not correct. Yeah, that shouldn't matter though. It'll correct when I load Windows, but we can change the date. That's really off topic. If it was, off by a few years or something, that'd be one thing, but since you guys want to nitpick over needless nonsense that has nothing to do with solving the problem, I'm going to address it so you'll shut up about it, because it has absolutely nothing to do with what we're trying to fix. Okay? And that's why I wasn't wasting my time with it before, but I'm going to now, just so you guys will shut up about it. I'm really struggling to fix a problem, and thinking about the date and time is just, I don't know why you think that's helpful or it's going to make a difference. But there you go. And let's save and exit. Nick says, he's quoting what I read out loud. Again, Nick, I guess you're not paying attention. I've already read all this out loud. We're not trying to configure a PCIe SSD with an M2 SATA or a SATA hard drive. We're not trying to do that. Obviously, you can't mix and match. You can't have one mechanical hard drive and one NVMe configured in a RAID. That's common sense, normal logic. You obviously can't do that. So the manual doesn't actually specify that a RAID can be configured in PCIe. It says you can't mix the drives. You can't mix PCIe and SATA in a RAID. Yeah, no duh. All these instructions are just wait a minute. Depending on the M2 connector you use, set the corresponding PCI storage dev on port XX item to RST controlled. Ooh, that's a different thing. Let's try that. That may actually get us somewhere. Let's go to yeah, we're not interested in configuring the SATA controller. We're trying to configure the PCIe controller. I keep repeating this over and over and over again, but I guess I'm just going to shut up because nobody's listening. So I think I'm just going to work in silence here. See, nothing's installed. I wonder if I can do this in legacy mode. You know what? I wonder if I can. Let's save it that way. I'm curious if it sees anything installed here. Let's see, that says port 9 and port 17. It says PCIe, port 9 and port 17. It doesn't belong under SATA. It's not SATA. But that, okay. This is the way Gigabyte wants to do it. Let's see if that makes any difference. Let's hit escape. Does Easy RAID become available to me now? No. Let's save it and reboot. And let's go to Easy RAID again. No. Still doesn't see any disks connected to the system. Why didn't it save it? RST controlled. RST controlled. Now save and exit. We'll go back in the BIOS. How about Easy RAID now? No. How about Intel Rapid Storage Technology now? Ah, here we go. So this is really, really dumb. I want to emphasize that there's a problem in interpretation of engineering facts, and it's very, very frustrating right now. And the reason this is frustrating is that you should never, ever go into the SATA controller for anything adjusting PCI Express. They are completely unrelated. This is a big fail from Gigabyte as far as I'm concerned. I'm not aware of any other manufacturer that would have you configure NVMe, not in the NVMe configuration part of the BIOS, but in the SATA part of the BIOS. That's a big fail. And I'll tell you why. If you use a motherboard from any other manufacturer, I can almost assure you you won't be doing that. So Gigabyte is playing by their own rules here, and it's very disappointing. But let me go back to where I was here. Let's create a RAID volume. Volume 1 is fine. RAID 0 stripe is fine. And we'll go to the create volume option, right? Let's see, where is it? Name, RAID level, stripe size. Oh, I got to select the disks. How do I select? Spacebar, enter. What do I do to select them? They're already selected. Stripe size, but create volume doesn't select at least two. Aren't I selecting them? What am I doing? Hit the X. Okay, X usually means you want to get rid of it, but here I guess you have to. Really, wow. It seems pretty clear to me whoever wrote this BIOS doesn't really understand how RAID works. They were just probably following some manual. They've never actually done it. It's amazing what companies will employ for the right rate, somebody who's completely unqualified. That is absolutely asinine. All right, so now create volume has become available, so we'll hit that. And yeah, 1.8 terabytes, normal, RAID volume, yes, hit enter. And there's our RAID volume now, we've got it. What a pain in the butt. So we want to definitely make sure that we remember these steps for Gigabyte boards if configuring M.2 NVMe drives, because it's very unique. It breaks all the rules and it doesn't follow any of the industry standards. And It's absolutely asinine. It is probably one of the most ridiculous things I've ever seen in a BIOS before. RAID configuration needn't be this difficult, and you should not have an NVMe configuration page where there's no configuration of NVMe available. So again, I can't get over how poorly this was done. But I'm sure it's going to operate just fine. But every time you update the BIOS, you will have to turn CSM off because it'll probably turn on by default. You'll have to go back into SATA controller mode and change it to Intel RST, and then you will have to assign ports 7 and 19 to RST controlled just to get your machine to boot again. You have to make 4 changes every time you update the BIOS. And they're buried. It's not like they're right there, right on the surface. You've got to go into advanced mode. You've got to go into 2 different menuing systems. And that's just a really, really, just bad. Just bad. All right, let's save this and exit. And let me go get my Windows installed USB stick. And we probably are going to need a driver for this. Windows 10 may not see that right away without a special driver. So let's find out right now. Let's see, there's a Windows 10 right there. What's interesting is on Threadripper, which is also a board made by Gigabyte, you absolutely do not go into SATA. We already had this discussion. Changing anything in the SATA menuing of the BIOS is just a complete waste of time, unless you've got something plugged into the SATA ports, which, again, you can go back to that video and rewatch it if you're curious. Let's take a look. We'll see if it sees the driver. Thomas Carter's provided a download for the RAID driver. Thank you, Thomas. Let's see if we need it. Let's go tab. Install. Let's see if the drive comes up. We're going to ignore this. I do not have a product key, so what we always enter here. Windows 10 Pro. Next. Agree to the end user license agreement, and let's see if it sees a drive. We go custom. It does, it sees it, so we don't need to install the driver. It sees both drives as one big drive, which is exactly what it's supposed to do. Let's see how fast Windows installs. Start your clocks, here we go. Gear says the M2 supports both SATA and NVMe. That is correct. And when you use the M2 in SATA mode, then the SATA parts of the BIOS become available to you. They actually have they make a difference. But when you're plugging into NVMe mode, you're no longer using the SATA interface. You're using the M2 interface, but in the BIOS, you're switching the channel away from channel SATA and onto channel NVMe. If you're watching channel 3 on TV and you switch to channel 5 on TV, you don't think it's the same channel, do you? So basically, you're confusing yourself, and the BIOS manufacturers or the developers aren't helping you at all when they conflate the difference between the form factor and interface, which is M2, with the protocol, which is either SATA or NVMe. Generally speaking, you only have so many SATA ports, and if you use the SATA in M2 mode, then you lose a SATA on the connector side for the traditional cabling. That's common sense. If you have 6 SATA ports and you use 2 of them in M2 SATA, well, 2 of them aren't going to work. 2 of your standard SATA ports won't work because you've just overridden them with the M2 socket. But if you configure the M2 to be in PCI Express mode, then you should be in PCI Express mode dealing with the PCI Express channels, which allow up to 32 gigs of data transfer versus the SATA channels, which allow up to 6 gigs of data transfer. It's just ridiculous. It's just really ridiculous. Nick is saying I'm a little upset because I got yelled at. Nick, I didn't yell at you. I scolded you for repeating what I've already said. You just repeated everything I already said 20 minutes earlier. You know how annoying that is? All I did is read out of the manual. Nick says, all I did is read out of the manual. Okay, so we both read the same thing, didn't we? I read it to you. I didn't need you to read it to me. It didn't make it any clearer just because you read it aloud after I read it aloud. That wasn't helpful. It's insulting and offensive. What did you think? The tone of your voice was going to differentiate the understanding of what was being said? Come on. So this is what happens when people try and help. And you see this on the internet all the time. People get into arguments and fights over trying to help. But the fact is, if you've never done it before, you need to keep your mouth quiet. I don't need speculation. I don't need people guessing. I've already read it out loud. So it was all there for everybody to understand together. And the trick was in those port configurations for Intel RST. And like I said, it doesn't belong in SATA. It doesn't belong there. It's in the wrong place. I have to reemphasize, if you've never done it before and you're not coming from a place of experience, you are not helping. So don't. Just don't. Say, you know what? I don't know. I've never done it. But if you have done it, then please talk to me. My God. The internet is just like this big dumpster. Everybody's got an opinion on stuff they have no experience with. It's frustrating. Maybe we shouldn't help you anymore if you're going to yell at us. Well, that's not help. If you've never done anything before, don't tell me how to do it because you're just guessing. I can guess without you. I'm hoping with, 600 people watching, somebody's done it. Somebody says, yes, I've done it, and here's what you've got to do. But none of you did that. Not a single one of you did that. So you're not helping me. This is very narcissistic to think that you're helping by guessing. I don't need your guesses. I want your facts and experience. If you don't have it, then say nothing. Can't you tell I'm frustrated? I'm trying to figure this out. You thought that's helping me to frustrate me more? And then you get upset when I get upset? And we're all helping each other, right? This is how this works? Clearly, it's not working. I would encourage any of you to start up your web camera, open up a computer problem, and then ask your audience to tell you how to fix it. And I want to see how you react before you say another word about the way I reacted. I want to see you try it and see what you do. It's just noise. It's just noise. And I'm trying to get data out of the noise, and it's so frustrating. All right, here we go, our first reboot. Can you see any difference in any application between two 1 terabyte NVMe drives in a RAID 0 and one 2 terabyte NVMe drive? The bigger a solid state drive is, the faster it performs. However, depending on the application, you know, it's going to vary. What your experience is going to be depends on how you use the computer. There's a number of variables there, from the processor, the amount of RAM, and then the applications, the number of applications in Windows that are open simultaneously, and the types of data that you're writing. If you're writing big sequential reads and writes, or what your IOPS is, it's going to vary. It's really hard to say. In general, RAID 0 should be faster, but not by much. But yes, it should technically, on a benchmark, be faster. Maybe if the 205,000 subscribers unsubscribed, you don't have to worry about the noise. Well, let's start with you. See, people seem to not understand the channel's offered for free. You're not paying anything for it. You don't have any right to be here. You're a guest. And you guys that are here regularly, you know, we have a thing. These people pop in, they think they run the place. They're going to be smart, and they can just go. Their subscription is worth nothing. So I'm not worried about it. It can go somewhere else. No loss there. If you're not going to be supportive and kind, you don't belong here. Isn't it the opposite? Aren't bigger drives a tad slower? No, bigger drives are faster. Just ignore them. I just remove them from the channel and ban them. It's easier than ignoring them. Anybody who's got a smart answer, you've got nothing worth saying. If you can't self-control your inability to speak out and be challenging, then I will do it for you. Again, we're a supportive community here. We help each other out. And if you want to challenge people, you go do that somewhere else. You don't do that here. It's just not the right channel for you. People don't understand that the content is free and they aren't paying anything for it, and it's being offered to them equally. Would they come in with some sort of weird narcissism or entitlement, and you're going to find out that's not going to get you too far here real quick. You could go take that nonsense somewhere else. If you could imagine being a teacher in a classroom and the students start telling you how to teach, how long is it going to be before you eject that student out of the classroom? If the student says, "Teacher, you talk too much," if the student says, "This class is too long," if the student is in any way disruptive and it's interfering with everybody else getting an education in the class, the responsible thing to do as the teacher is to evict the child out of the classroom. So that's what we do here. If you don't want the education, you're welcome to leave. If you have experience and facts you'd like to share, it's always welcome. But if you want to guess when I'm trying to fix something, I don't need guessing. I'm already frustrated. I don't need you suggesting I wave a dead chicken over my head and chant. It's very frustrating. And why it's so frustrating is if somebody in there actually did have experience, I couldn't see their comment. You understand? Because of all the guessing that was going on, it just created all this static and noise. if somebody had actually done this before and said, Carrie, I've done this and this is what you have to do, I would have given that person a great big hug and kiss. That's the difference. Not all information is equal. And even though your intentions are in the right place, you're causing harm. I'm trying to explain that your intentions don't make what you're doing unharmful. You're still causing harm. You're disrupting. And I don't want you to disrupt. So please don't disrupt. Okay, I think this is going for John. We'll just put John in there. So I'm going to have to download and install drivers on this coming up here in a moment. And then we can run Crystal Disk Mark on it and see what kind of numbers we get. I expect we'll see somewhere around 5,000 megabytes per second on the reads and writes, on sequential reads and writes. That would be my guess. Kevin B says, love your channel, Carrie. Thank you, Kevin. See, I need more love, guys, more love. Come on now. Thank you. All right, so what do I want to do? I guess I got to give it some internet access, don't I? Let me grab an Ethernet cable and plug it in. We can start downloading some updates. So there were a couple problems with build 1809 that y'all know about the people that had multiple directories for like my documents and pictures and movies. If they moved it to another location and didn't clear the other older location out, kept both locations, the original location got replaced and removed, which is how that accident occurred. I'm not sure why anybody would ever do that, but it didn't affect very many people. It affected a lot of people, but in general, I've never met anybody personally affected by it, because that's a pretty stupid thing to do, to move your My Documents folder and then not clear out the previous My Documents folders, but to leave it full and then continue on somewhere else. That's really makes it difficult to back your data up. And it's this is what happens when you make computers easy to use for anybody. They don't know what they're doing. And they created a situation that engineers didn't understand and resulted in removing these old directories. Where the engineers screwed up is they should have checked those directories before they remove them. I don't know what's going on in the minds at Microsoft that you would just blindly delete a directory without checking its capacity first, to see if there's any files in it. But that's what happened there. And then there was another issue with HP computers with a toolbar that's not compatible. That's HP's fault for not writing the software to Microsoft's requirements, and as a result, it breaks. That's HP's fault. It doesn't break the whole computer. It's just a stupid toolbar that most people don't even use it or want it, but they also don't know how to get rid of it. And it's causing computers to blue screen with 1809. And then finally, there was another problem with 1809 when you're extracting a zip file. And that was if you extracted a zip file into the same directory where you had previously extracted the zip file, it would overwrite the contents of that directory with similar names without asking permission. It would just, which I don't know why that's a problem. If you're extracting the exact same zip file into the exact same directory, it's going to rewrite the exact same files. So I don't know why that's a problem. But Microsoft is patching that in Patch Tuesday, November. That'll be addressed, but I don't see it. None of these are real serious problems. This is just people who don't understand how to use computers. And so that's Microsoft's fault, because Microsoft needs to understand people don't know how to use computers. And the engineers they hire are the exact opposite. They're the antithesis of that. So we've got a huge discrepancy between the people who write the code and the managers who manage the people who write the code, and the end user who uses the system and is using the system in a way that the engineers and the managers never thought about. So Microsoft is learning these lessons the hard way. And as we continue to make computers easier to use and require less education as a barrier to entry to using a computer, we can expect that this is going to continue with other updates where the engineers and the end users are not on the same page. I anticipate we'll see more of this in the future. Everything has to be designed for a child, and the engineers, they just don't think that way. Now, it used to be you needed a certain level of education to use a computer. You had to be good at math, you had to understand coding. And it's wonderful that they've removed that barrier and made it easy for everybody. But at the same time, in making it easy for everybody, they've got to take responsibility for understanding the misinterpretation and misuse of the product that may be done in mass by even a small percentage, because Windows is so popular, that will have a negative media impact on their organization as what happened. None of it makes any logical sense. I understand what the engineers were thinking when they said, well, there's no reason to have two My Documents folders, we'll get rid of the old one. But why they didn't check it to see if anything was in there first is beyond my comprehension. Any engineer would know to do that. But the end user to do that is weird. It's just like, if you're gonna move your My Documents folder, move it. Don't keep it in two places. That's really confusing. It's gonna be hard for you to find anything, hard for you to back anything up. And Microsoft shouldn't even have allowed it. Windows shouldn't have allowed it. When the user, so the engineers have to fix this. When a user moves a My Documents folder, then a dialog should start that says, okay, we're gonna take everything out of this one and move it over here to this other location. Are you okay with that? And in doing so, it should remove the contents and the directory and put it into its new location. It should never allow a user to have two My Documents locations on the same system. And the fact that they did is where Microsoft dropped the ball. Those are my opinions on coding. Christoph Esch has contributed €5. He says, this is exactly why I started my YouTube channel, to educate the people. Understand that a lot of what I'm sharing is coming from my experience, right? So what I'm telling you, I used to code. I was briefly did programming. I was around since the days of DOS. I have seen the integration into Windows, where instead of knowing codes, all you did is point the mouse at the picture and click on the picture, when you couldn't dumb it down much more than that. And I was reluctant. I didn't like Windows at first because I thought it was ridiculously childish. But I could multitask in it. And I used to say, why would I want to multitask? I can only do one thing at a time. And before you know it, there I am in Windows with, you know, things downloading and emails open and web browsers are open, and you got all these things happening at once. Could never do that in DOS. So it took me a while to warm up to it. And I went, oh yeah, Windows is good, I like it. But then it sort of brought with it new problems from people who are not computer literate. And that's why Windows was made, to attract those people. So those people shouldn't be allowed to do certain things. And I'm gonna go big screen here for a minute because I want to talk to you for a minute. I've told this story before. I had a customer bring me a system, and he said that all of the words were gone on his screen. And it started with a phone call, and I said, well, what do you mean all the words are gone? He goes, I don't know how else to explain it. There's no words. I said, do you have a start button? He goes, well, I mean, I've got a button, but it doesn't say start? No. Then go to your control panel, just type in, tell him what to type in, and he goes. I go, now click on display, and he clicks on display. I go, now go to the settings tab. He goes, which one's the settings tab? I said, it's the tab that says settings. He goes, none of my tabs say anything. It's like, wait a minute. You see tabs? He says, yes. There's like 5 of them? Yes, but they don't say anything. Right. Did you change anything on the system? No. Did you add any software? No. Did you take any software off? No. Did you make any changes about anything? No. When did the problem start? Today. When was the last time you saw it work? Yesterday. Okay, so yesterday everything was fine. You shut it down. Today you turn it on. All your words are gone. Yes. I don't know what you're talking about. I need to see this. You need to bring it to my office. Customer brings it over. And I turn it on. And he leaves it with me because I'm like, this is going to take a while. If what you're saying is true, maybe it's a video driver. I don't know. This is weird. I start the computer up, and yeah, the start button doesn't say start. And we're talking Windows XP days, right? So it says start. And there's no remote access for me to look at it remotely. So that's exactly the way he described it. Start thinking about pranks we used to pull on each other when I was a working tech at one of the big corporations here in Arizona. And I started to think about pranks. Types of pranks we would pull. We take a picture of a screenshot of the control panel open and then set it as the wallpaper. And then say, hey, I can't get my control panel to close. When mice had the balls on the bottom of them, the mice ball, we would take a piece of Scotch tape and place it underneath the ball. So the mouse didn't work. They could roll it around, and my mouse doesn't work. So there were these little pranks, and I was thinking of pranks, and I really thought maybe I was being pranked. So I said, okay, if this was a prank, what if somebody set the text color to be the same as the background color? Because I don't think Windows allows that. So I go into the themes part of the display properties, and I change the theme back to Windows XP standard theme, and then of course everything's back to normal again. And for grins and giggles, I tried changing the color of the text manually to the color of the background, thinking any engineer would say, if this number that represents the color of the text matches this number that represents the color of the background, initiate a dialog warning that says you cannot change the text to match the same color or you won't be able to read it. But that didn't happen. So it's where the engineers dropped the ball again. It never occurred to them that somebody might do that. So I set the theme back to Windows XP default, and everything was back to normal. And I called the customer, and I said, look, I want to ask you again, did you make any changes to the computer the day before, on yesterday? No. You weren't playing with your screen colors? Like adjusting the colors of the text or the backgrounds? Oh, yeah, I did. I go, well, let me tell you what you did. You changed your text color to your background color. So you can't see any of the text anymore. I've adjusted it and I fixed it, and it's a regular 1 hour rate. There's your bill. So this is when I say people cause themselves harm. He should have left it alone. If he would have just left it alone, he wouldn't have been inconvenienced and he'd have been a little richer. Education costs money. So when I give these videos out for free and people don't appreciate it, I'm trying to emphasize here the value of what I'm offering, both from real life experience and from real demonstrations caught on camera, so people can argue with me about, what you're seeing is real. And I'm not the smartest guy in the world. I anticipate when I am teaching people who are here because they want that information. And there are many times when people have mentioned things to me in the chat that I didn't know, and I've continued to learn. And that's important. It's as important for me to learn as it is for me to teach. And I really like it to be interactive. I like it to be a two-way. But I want to emphasize, when somebody has never done something, you shouldn't tell somebody else how to do it. You're in the wrong place. It takes a certain amount of arrogance. You should just be a participant, or rather be a spectator and watch it and see how it plays out. And then you'll gain from the knowledge as I will. When people start throwing out suggestions, I can't tell who's coming from a place of experience and who's guessing. I don't know. And I'm already frustrated. If you've ever contacted technical support because you were frustrated, and then you had problems understanding the technical support person or figured out you knew more than they did, then you're even more frustrated. It aggravates it. It makes it worse. And as a tech, dealing with clientele who are very impatient and they're very demanding, and it's often a thankless job. There's a lot of stress and a lot of pressure in the position. And if you've never been paid to fix a computer before, I can assure you, a customer will rip your head off if you're just eating up time on the clock guessing how to fix their computer at their expense. You're going to be in a world of pain. So if you're not going to do that in that environment, don't do it here either. It's the same result of just causing grief. I don't care about people who guess. I'm not interested in your guesses. The internet's filled with guessers. Now, at the same time, if you have, if you see me doing something and you know for a fact from personal experience there's another way, an easier way, or a better way, please speak up. Don't go, oh my God, I'm not going to speak up now after that. That's for people who are speaking up with no clue about what they're talking about. There's two different worlds here. And I want to make sure we're clear on this. The internet is just rife with people with opinions and no experience, and I'm so done with that. I'm so over that. If you didn't get the gist of that by now. Yeah, I am just done with that nonsense. But thank you for the kind words and the support. It's just a handful of people that it just frustrates me, if you couldn't tell. Frederick Lenholm's contributed 100 Swedish krona. Thank you, Frederick. Thanks for your contribution. I wrote a program once. I've told this story before. When I worked at one of the corporations, one of the jobs was to get these old machines from clients, from workstations of employees around the building, and to collect them, securely erase the hard drives, or erase them. I don't think they were securely erased. And then they would go to a recycler. And so there were all these steps we had to go through to erase the hard drive. And I said, this is ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous. I can automate this whole thing in a big batch file. So I wrote this batch file, put it on a floppy disk. This was those days that we were using floppy disks. And I gave it to all my fellow techs. I go, look, this is going to make your life easier. If you've got to go collect a workstation that's going to be retired and recycled, all you got to do, instead of following all those steps and all those sheets of paper they gave us, just put this disk in and type, go. That's the name of the batch file, go. And the one tech I worked with is an older gentleman. He said, how do I use it? I go, you can't break it. You can't not understand how to use it. You type go. That's all you do. Can you handle that? Just type go. He comes back about an hour later. He goes, it didn't work. I was like, you're kidding me, right? He goes, no, it didn't work. I'm like, what do you mean it didn't work? All you had to do was type go. How did you do that wrong? I don't know. I did it and it doesn't work. I said, well, show me what you did. And he puts the disk in and he types, so he's at a C prompt. He types A:go. I go, oh, no. Oh my God. I go, you can't run remotely from the C drive. You have to run it locally off the A drive. You know what? Give me the batch file. Just give me the disk back. So all I had to do in my batch file is make the first command A:. So if they're already at the A drive, it doesn't go anywhere. It's still at the A. But if they're starting at C or D or E or F, it automatically goes back to A, because when he ran A:go, the batch file called for files, system files that were on the floppy disk. But it was looking at the drive he started from. So if he started from the C drive, and whatever directory he was in at that time, when he called A:go, the first command it hit that needed to load a file off the floppy couldn't find it, and it crashed. It says it can't find the file. So it was a very easy fix, and it was my fault because I should have anticipated that my fellow techs were not as technical as I am, and it's inherent in who I am. If I'm running something off of a drive letter, I go to the drive letter first and run it from there. I don't execute it from a different drive letter. This is a problem that doesn't exist in Windows, but this was something that, you know, back in the DOS days. And as a result, it makes you a better programmer. It makes you a better developer. And this was a batch file, which isn't exactly, you know, a difficult coding, but it was a complicated batch file. It was a long batch file, and it called out these different commands, and all the commands it was calling for, those were all on the floppy disk. And I was just beside myself that anybody would have run it off of the C drive. Like, why would you do that? So even texts themselves aren't all at the same level. And like I said, knowing that, and it was just a very easy fix. It was 2 letters, A: had to be added right to the beginning of the batch file. That's all I had to do. And it made that problem go away, and they used that floppy disk for years, as far as I know, when recycling systems. And it saved a lot of time, and it added a bit of consistency, so no steps were skipped or forgotten. And this is part of the problem when you're coding or writing, is understanding the way your code's going to be used. And that's why viruses exist. That's why exploits and those patches keep coming out every month. Except those people are doing it with intention. They're intentionally finding exploits to take advantage of you, to get you to pay money. This was just pure ignorance. So as a developer, you've got to fight those 2 things. And at the very least, as a manager of developers, even if your developers don't know, it's your job as the manager to anticipate and to prevent that from occurring. So they're dropping the ball at Microsoft on that, big time. Okay, let's see what we've got here. Let's go back to the machine. So we're at the Gigabyte ORS. Let's go to their website. Let's go. Bring up that. We'll go here under support. Not this support. This support up here, this is for generic support. This support down here, this is for product support of whatever product you're looking at. So we've got Windows 10 64-bit. There's the audio driver, which we'll grab. We'll save it. One of the first drivers we want to put in is the chipset driver. It's very important. We can add the Intel ME driver. Intel LAN. USB 3.1. VGA is probably a waste of time. I'm suspecting we probably got a newer Intel driver, but we'll go ahead and grab it anyway. BIOS should be F10, right? Yeah, we're still on F10. And we shouldn't need any of the utilities. So we're going to grab all those downloads and we'll wait for those to finish, and then we can begin the driver installs, and then we can run the speed test and see what kind of performance we're getting out of this bad boy. When's the INF driver? Right there. Looks like it might have interrupted one of my downloads, which is fine. I'm not too worried about that right now. That's part of the problem when you update the chipset drivers. It could interfere with anything you've got happening in the background. So you always want to make sure you're not doing anything else, but that's not important to me, so I'm not worried about it. But that's an important driver to get installed, is that chipset driver. And that should be your first driver you install. This is the audio driver. We're just extracting the zip file into its own folder, which now opens, and we'll find the setup in here, and we'll run that setup. And we can expect to have to reboot after this as well. I'm just closing these windows. Now we can hit next. And we're going to reboot again. So what I'll probably do is I'll remake the video going through the precision steps now that I know how it's done, because I will forget because it's so abnormal. But I will, while it's fresh on my mind, I will probably make this a quick tips video, and I'll just get right into the nitty-gritty of these are the settings you have to change on a gigabyte board for NVMe RAID 0 configuration. So it puts that to bed, and then if anybody else tries it, at least they'll have my video. They won't have to go through this nonsense that I went through today. We'll optimize it for them. Okay, we did the chipset, we did the audio. Management engine, we could do that. But yeah, the Samsung Magician software will not work in RAID mode or with Intel RST on. So if there's firmware updates to these drives, we won't be able to get them. You would have to reinstall the drive as an NVMe drive, and then the Samsung Magician software would work. LAN driver, USB 3 driver. I guess I can eject the Windows 10 disk too. And this would be the Intel graphics driver. Where's the setup? Okay, I guess it just wants that file right there then. I guess I better extract it first. Oh, it's already got a newer driver. Look at that. Okay, that's fine. So the other thing we can do to make sure we're running the latest drivers for everything is we can download a tool called the Intel Driver Updater. And we'll just do a quick search for it. We'll go to Google first because Google's just a better search engine than Bing. And we'll type in Intel Driver Update. That's good enough. And right here is the link I want. And download now and run. And yeah, if you're running an Intel-based system, you can download this as well. Agree to the license agreement and then hit install. And yes. And then it's going to ask if you want to participate in this Intel Computing Improvement Program. I have no interest in working as a beta tester for Intel. So I'm going to hit launch. And now another browser window is going to open and it's going to scan the system and look for newer drivers for anything Intel, which would be our graphics card, our LAN. And it says your software is up to date. Otherwise, there would be an option to click to download. And that's what we want to see. So with that, we can put the Crystal Disk Mark software on and we can measure what our RAID performance is. But what I will have to do, I'll have to redo all of this because I need to reconfigure the drives in AHCI mode in order to run the Samsung Magician software to make sure the firmware is up to date, because there was a recent firmware update. And then I can reconfigure them back in RAID and reinstall Windows. But I just wanted to get through this for this specific video for you guys watching live. There is a new version of Crystal Disk Mark available and Crystal Disk Info than what I have here on the disk. I need to update these. I think Crystal Disk Info is up to 7. I can't remember. I think Disk Mark is 602, and I think 783 is the current. It's been like 3 versions. I need to update my flash drive. All right, let's see what kind of numbers we're looking at. I'm guessing around 5,000. Let's find out. Oh, it looks like I missed a contribution here. 20 pounds was contributed by Stevios. Would love to use my Twitch Prime for this great channel of educational information and good title. Well, thank you for your contribution. I appreciate that. Make sure you have moderator status here. Well, that's not right. What drive letter am I on? I'm on the flash drive, it looks like. Hold on a minute. Stop this test. Wonder why it started there. Let's hit stop. Let's put a stop to that. No, that's not right at all. All right, let's take a look. Let's select the C drive and try it again. That's probably going to be a little better. Thought it was taking an awful long time. I suspect the number's going to be a lot larger now. Winston said he sent me some Canadian Coca-Cola. All right, Winston, awesome. Thank you. Well, those numbers are a little disappointing. It seems like what an NVMe drive would do on its own, let alone in a RAID 0. That's not impressive at all. I'll bet you one single drive in AHCI mode, or I'm sorry, in NVMe mode, not in RAID 0, would perform pretty much identical to what you're seeing right now. Oh, maybe not those numbers. I don't know. There's only one way to know for sure, right? Merle's copied something off the website that says that the motherboard can be configured in RAID with 3 M.2 drives for record speeds of up to 3551 megabytes a second. But you can achieve 3551 megabytes per second on just a modern NVMe drive. Are the Samsung NVMe drivers on? No, because we're in RAID mode. You have to use RAID drivers. You can't use NVMe drivers. You have to use RAID drivers. RAID, R-A-I-D. So the NVMe drivers only work when you're in NVMe mode, not when you're in RAID mode. RAID takes over. That's why the Samsung Magician software will not work with drives in RAID mode. It's tricking the computer to see 2 drives as one. As far as Windows is concerned, we have one 2 terabyte SSD. It does not see it as 2 1 terabyte SSDs. That's what the RAID software does. It requires a RAID driver to operate. And that's not to say there might be a better RAID driver out there than what we're using, but Microsoft is loading the default one, and you know, we could go to the website and download their driver for RAID just to test it, but I suspect it's not going to make much of a difference. You can also look in the device manager just to make sure everything looks happy in there, that we don't have any items with missing drivers, because that could impact system performance. But I mean, it's following what the manual says it'll do. I just assumed the manual was outdated, that the speed would be determined by the drive and the technology as it advances. But it may be a limitation of the board itself. Let's see. System. Yeah, all the drivers are loaded. There's nothing that's missing a driver. All right, let's take a screenshot of that. We'll just hit Function Alt. Where's my print screen? F12. I'll go to Paint. Oops. Oops. Save as JPEG. Let's put it on. Do I still have the flash drive? Yeah. Let's put it on the flash drive. Let's call it RAID 0 NVMe, Samsung. Can't see anything. My screen's too small. Oh, wow. Okay, and let's save it on the flash drive. Very good. Okay, so that's all I need to know for right now. So the next thing I want to do is test a single drive. So let's restart. And we're going to go back into the BIOS. And we're going to completely erase everything we've done, so we have a basis for comparison. Now, if I really wanted to, I could do an image of the system with like a Cronus, but there's no activation, there was no product key, and it only takes a minute to install and to download the driver. So I'm just going to start over again just for straight comparison. So let's do this again. Restart. All right, let's see if I can get into the BIOS this time. Good. And now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to put it back the way it was, and we're going to start by erasing the RAID configuration first. See, is Easy RAID even an option for me anymore? No, Easy RAID still does not function. That's got to be SATA only, I guess. So we'll go to Intel Rapid Storage Technology Volume 1, delete, yes, erase it. Now that's erased. Hit escape. Let's go back to the SATA controller. Let's put the, no, that's not what I want. That's such a bad BIOS. Let's go to Intel Rapid Storage Technology. Nope, I don't want that. Where is it? All the way at the bottom. Let's put that back to AHCI mode. And then let's go turn CSM back on, which is under BIOS, CSM. We'll just leave it on. So that would be like the default of the way the BIOS would be configured. If you just updated the BIOS, for example, that would set it all back to the way it was out of the box. And then it's not going to be able to boot now. Good, that's exactly what I needed. Let's turn that off. And let me pull this flash drive, which is all my USB stuff on it, my tools, and let's put the Windows 10 flash drive back in it. And let's do another install of Windows 10. Should automatically boot, do the flash drive, because it's the only thing it can boot to. So you shouldn't have to configure anything in the BIOS. And then of course, when we get to that point in the Windows setup, it's going to ask us which of the M2 NVMe drives we want to install. And I don't know that I'll be able to tell one from the other. So I guess we'll just go with the lowest numbered drive, whichever one is first. So we're going to go ahead and click next, just like before. We'll hit install now, just like before. Oh, how's my boy? You guys are ready for your dinner, aren't you? I don't have a product key. Windows 10 Pro. Next. Accept the license terms. Next. Custom, we should see two drives, drive 0 and drive 1. I'm going to assume drive 0 is the top drive, but either way they should perform. I think they both perform exactly the same, if I'm not mistaken. Let's go ahead and just choose drive 0, and it's going to automatically partition and format that. And while that's happening, I'd be curious if that actually happens faster. It already seems like it's moving faster than it was in RAID 0, which is kind of ironic. And while that's happening, let's feed the dogs. You hungry? You ready for your dinner? Yeah? All right, let's get some food for you. All right, Jimmy. Oh, that's a good jump. That's a good boy. You're a good boy. You ready? Are you ready? There you go. What about you, Lyle? Are you ready for your dinner? I hear you tapping your toes. All right, here we go. Oh, thank you. There you go, buddy. Good boys. Okay, dogs are eating. Carrie, do you ever get a day off? I've been trying to not work on weekends, but I usually get a couple of phone calls. But I'm trying. As long as I got people waiting on me, it's a lot of pressure to get work done. Are you sure you're on the right kind of RAID? It's a RAID 0. It's RAID 0. I think. Wait a minute. Was it in RAID 1? No, it asked me stripe size. You know what? That's a good question. I don't recall being offered RAID 1 or 0. I assumed I'm in 0, but the performance numbers certainly look like RAID 1 to me, now that you mention it. I will go back and check. But for right now, we're going to finish this install. We'll reload the drivers again, and then we'll run the test one more time, just so we can have a baseline of where to build from. But yeah, if it was in RAID 1, that would explain the performance. But I don't recall getting that information. We'll look in there again. You ready for your cookies? Yeah? These are the cookies Patrick sent you guys. You can have a few of these because they're so little. Okay, here's a cookie for you. There's a cookie for you. Oh, don't take my finger. There's a cookie for you. There's another cookie. Hey, what'd I say about my finger? There's a cookie for you. Nice. Good boy. Okay. All right, now they got their cookies. They're happy. All right. Dark Cipher Lucius says, knowing Super Chat takes a chunk of the donation I donated via the PayPal instead. Thank you for that. Ashes confirms it was a RAID 0 with a 64 kilobyte stripe. Okay, kind of thought it was. But I was thinking if those numbers were in RAID 1, they make sense. But in RAID 0, they don't make sense. Shaggy FL says, Carrie, thank you so much for Crystal Disk info. I took my PC in because my hard drive came up as red. My guy said I was lucky to get it there on time. It was on its last leg. Ooh, well, that's why we make backups, so you're never in that situation. You know, as long as you have a backup at all times, your hard drive can fail. Not all hard drives will warn you before they die. Some just stop working. It's like a light bulb. You could have a light bulb working fine for months or years, and then one day you go to turn on the light and it just goes, it pops. No warning, no indication it was going to go. And that's why we have RAID. I'm sorry, that's why we have backups. That's not why I have RAID. That's why I have backups. Trying to read and talk at the same time doesn't work well. Still, the RAID said that the capacity was double. Oh, that's a very good point, Magni. Magni Johansson says, yeah, if it was in RAID 1, it would have said 1 terabyte would be the total storage. But it did say total storage was 2 terabytes. And that right there confirms we were in RAID 0. But could we have optimized the stripe size? Generally, you want to stick with default values unless you're using your computer in a special or different way than most. generally the default values are what you want to stick with. Otherwise, what you would have to do is you'd have to create the RAID array, adjust your stripe size, and then reload Windows and redo the testing. And even if you got higher performance on Crystal Disk Mark, that still doesn't mean it's going to be higher performance in how you actually use the machine. So tuning it to get good numbers out of Crystal Disk Mark may not make the machine faster. In other words, it's how you use the machine that will determine if the stripe size is going to be faster or slower for you, not the benchmark, unless you're only interested in benchmarks. But that's a weird reason to build a computer. Okay, so we're back to this point now. We'll click yes. Yes. Skip. We're getting different options because we're plugged into the Ethernet now and it wants us to create a Microsoft account. I want an offline account. And it says, you sure you don't want to sign in with Microsoft instead? What did I just say? So insulting. But this is what happens when you deal with the general public, that Microsoft is sort of obligated to put that in there. None of this really matters. I'm not going to keep this, but I just want to do everything the same just for accurate testing reasons. Yeah, it might be downloading something in the background right now. Again, we're connected to the network now, so this might take a little longer. Here we go. Finally. Okay, so let me go get those drivers again. So if you remember, we went to Google. And we're looking for drivers for the Z370 Gaming 7. I know I put Gigabyte in there before, but Gigabyte's the only one who sells that model. So that's the first link on Google. Again, we don't use this support. We use this one down here for the product page. We're going to go to drivers for Windows 10. We're going to grab the Realtek sound driver and hit save. And we're going to grab the chipset driver and hit save. And we're going to go to the management engine and hit save. These are the same things with earlier versions. See the version number? So we want the newer versions. It's a little confusing. See, they've got it 3 times, 3 different versions. I guess if you're using an old operating system, you'll want the old version. One more reason to not use an old OS. I don't need that. I did see there's a RAID driver. Yeah, we could use the Intel Rapid Storage Technology driver. On the RAID mode, when we reset that, we'll use that driver right there. USB 3.1, that's a short one. We'll grab it real quick. And it said that the VGA driver was already newer using Windows Update. And so while that's downloading, let's view our downloads. Do we have everything yet? I think it's downloaded everything. Let's go ahead and just go to Windows Update and let's grab whatever updates are there, just like we did before. And we'll wait for that to complete, and then we'll restart the system and put those drivers in. So it's going to take a couple minutes. While we're waiting, just take a look at what's going on in the chat room here. Okay, you want me to go to Key Features and go to NVMe RAID. Let's see. Yeah, they're both ×4. That's what I was kind of curious about, if one was going to be faster, if one was a ×2. They're both ×4. All three of them are ×4. Ooh, that's impressive. Up to 3551 megabytes a second. Doesn't make any sense. We can achieve that off one drive. Well, it's nice they got overcurrent protection in the USB ports with a digital fuse. That's nice to see. But they sure do promote the heck out of a lot of really tiny stuff here. Okay, I guess we made it through that. Close that. Restart. What is your recommendation for a driver update utility? Stay away from driver update utilities. Don't use them. Leave your system alone if it's working. The only driver you should be concerned about is your video card driver, and that's it. Windows 10 will load all your other drivers for you, and unless you have some bizarre device that's just uncommon, it's some unique piece of hardware, you should only get the driver from that specific manufacturer. Otherwise, you're just gambling. There's so many drivers that are similar that'll cause your system to blue screen and crash, and you may end up having to completely reinstall Windows to fix it. Unless you're a tech and you know how to deal with that kind of stuff, I would avoid playing around with the drivers. It's not a good way to spend your time, in my opinion. You will see almost no benefit from one version of a driver to another, except when it comes to video cards. And you should be getting those directly from the card manufacturer or from the chipset. So if it's NVIDIA, you can go to NVIDIA.com. If it's AMD, you can go to AMD.com. If it's, you get what I'm saying there? Just want to extract all these right now. Okay, we'll restart. So I'm only putting all these back in just to make sure the system test is a fair test, that all the same drivers are installed and everything's configured the same. So we compare the benchmark numbers. They're not going to be tainted or contaminated by a testing variable that was different. So, you know, the sound driver obviously doesn't have any performance impact on the hard drive, but I want to make sure that we set everything up exactly the same so that, you know, the trolls and the people who just don't really understand technology very well won't use that as an excuse. It's really exhausting. Okay, let's do, let's see, we don't need the Intel. Oh, we can do the well, I can leave it off. USB 3.1. The driver takes just a couple minutes, well, not a couple minutes, it takes a few seconds to install. There it goes. Let's go back to Windows Update. Let's check it again. I don't think the video driver installed. Yeah, with Threadripper, we've got 3 Samsung EVO 500 gig drives and a RAID 0, and it gets about over 5,000, I think 6,000 megabytes per second on the read. So I don't know why this gigabyte board is so much slower, unless it's a limitation of the chip bandwidth of the chipset, which is possible. I don't know without, you know, trying it on like an Asus board or another manufacturer that supports RAID 0. I should have the Samsung Magician software on the flash drive, but not on that one because that flash drive has Windows on it, so I can take that flash drive out right now. Or did I just disconnect? I don't even know what that was. You can always tell when my screen is in the really is in the short mode or the small screen mode because I can't see. That didn't look right to me. No, I guess it's the right one. I don't know what this is. This must be... Oh, okay, that's the liquid cooler. All right. We could probably turn that off as an option to be disconnected in the future. I think that's a setting we can adjust there. So let me plug in this other flash drive, which should have the Samsung Magician software on there. And let's load that up. We're also going to need the... of course, I can't see. So we want crystal disk info. Let's copy that. No, crystal disk mark. Let's copy that. And I want the Samsung Magician and NVMe driver. Let's copy that and put it in here as well. And that should be all I need from there. Okay, we should be happy now. Very good. We're all up to date. Let's just run Crystal Disk Mark just as it is without the Samsung Magician. Let's make sure we're on the right drive. There we go. And let's see what kind of numbers we get compared to the RAID 0 numbers, right? So we're just on one single drive right now. Ah. Yeah. Explain that to me. Magni wants to know if the speeds are the same with or without RAID 0, would it make more sense to have just 2 drive letters instead? Yes. And the reason for that is if one drive fails in RAID 0, they both fail. You lose them both. You lose the data on both. 50% of the data on a RAID 0 array is kept on one drive and the other 50% is kept on the other drive in a 2-drive RAID 0. If it's a 3-drive RAID 0, then 1/3 of every file is stretched across the 3 drives. If any single drive fails, you've lost all of your data. Completely 100% lost it all. So for security reasons, if there's no performance difference in RAID 0, why in the world would you sacrifice the integrity of your data if you should experience a single drive failure? Why would you want to lose both drives? Oh, those write speeds are quite a bit slower. Let's see if they move up a little bit. So there was definitely an improvement on write speeds because the write and read speeds were pretty much identical on the RAID 0 config. Not so much on the single drive performance on the writes. These numbers should conform to the specifications at Samsung.com listed on the drive. The numbers we're looking at now of single drive performance. These numbers look pretty typical to me for single drive Samsung 970 EVO. It looks like it's performing right in the ballpark where it belongs. The numbers aren't that big going from RAID 0 when you consider the expense, right? You're doubling the amount of money, you're doubling the amount of storage, but you are not doubling your speed. Now, part of that is probably a limitation of the Intel chip. You probably need to go to a Threadripper or an X99 or X299 to fully take advantage of more PCIe lanes and faster performance. But let's take another look at the original results. I go big screen again, big screen. So here's a different Samsung 970 EVO. What kind of numbers did we get on that? So that's the same drive in a different system. Well, not literally the same drive, but the same make and model of drive. And you'll see the numbers are close enough to being identical. You're never going to get the same numbers precisely twice. That's why you need to run basically like 3 tests and average them out if you really want more precision. But based on just the results of a single test, you can see that that falls right in line with the performance of a 970 EVO, which is fine. It's all well and good. And let's go back now to, where's the RAID configuration? RAID 0. And you'll see the read numbers are almost unchanged. It's not enough difference there that any human being would notice. The 4K test is significantly lower. Or is it 4 gig? Whatever it is, these numbers are virtually identical, and these numbers are virtually identical. So the only number that really changes with any significance is the write speed goes up quite significantly. It goes up by a third, 33% faster write speed. It's interesting, but that doesn't justify the cost, in my opinion, or the risk. Remember the risk involved, and all the RAID configuration set up in the, which was obviously left scars on both of us, right? So let's, mental scars. Let me go to a screenshot of this. Let's see, function, alt, print, back to paint. File, save as, JPEG. Let's go here. We already have one called Samsung 970 EVO. And I'll just call this, well, you know what, that's going to confuse me. Just call it test, which I learned to spell. Test 2. Okay. So we've got that recorded. Let's close this down, and then let's go to the Samsung NVMe driver and put that in. And it's going to want to reboot. So we're going to restart. You guys can start your stopwatches to see what the boot time is on this. I'm sure it's quick. And then let's bring up the Samsung Magician software. Let's get that installed. And then we'll check to see if there's any firmware updates. Perfect. I bet there's going to be firmware updates. Yep, there is. Let's update it. See, firmware version, old version. And we have to sit and wait. Don't turn your computer off. Don't use your computer for anything. This is critical that you leave it alone. I know it goes against a lot of you guys just like to mess with stuff. Seems like, based on comments in the chat room, you guys can't leave well enough alone. All right, we'll go shut down. We have to shut the whole thing down, and then we'll power it back up, and it will redetect what Windows considers to be a brand new drive installed. So there, everything just powered off, if you're looking here in the right corner. And let's bring it back up again. And I can't do that in RAID 0 mode. That's the other thing. The Samsung Magician software, the firmware updates, the drive status, none of that works in RAID mode. RAID 0, 1, 5 doesn't work. So I will have to have a talk with the customer and see what he wants to do, if he's going to change his mind on this whole RAID concept. I think it's not panning out the way he thought it was going to. I'm going to guess he's not going to want it. But we'll do whatever he wants. We'll see what happens here. There's my Magician software. It just takes a minute. Okay, now we see you have the latest firmware version. We see that we're running the Samsung NVMe driver. Let's see if I can switch the drive. Let's go to the other drive that we haven't formatted yet. And it's got the old version as well, so let's update that one next. Do them one at a time, just like I'm showing you. Again, be very patient. It will eventually pop up. There it goes. And leave it be until it's done, and it will require another power off. And when we come back up, we'll run Crystal Disk Mark again and see if that made any difference in performance. So we're about to find out here in just a moment. Okay, I'm going to turn it back on. Here we go. Good boy. You're a good boy. Yes, you are. Yes, you're a good fuzzy monster. Yeah, you're just a fuzzy monster. Yes, you are. Oh, here comes Jealous. Here comes your brother Jealous. Okay. Now, everything should be good. Let's go to Crystal Disk. Disk Mark. Make sure we're on the C drive. And let's run it and see what it does. So that seems to be some kind of a magic number. This 3552, it also, oh, we just exceeded it. Never mind. I was going to say, isn't that what the motherboard highlights say? You can achieve 3552 in RAID 0. It seems like we can exceed that outside of RAID 0. Yeah, write speed is still about 2/3 of the read speed. That seems pretty consistent. Although these numbers seem slightly improved, not a big difference. Not really a big difference. And in fact, without benchmarking software, as a human being, you wouldn't be able to tell the difference. I'm going to be a bad boy, and I'm going to load up those other screens while this is running. What were we looking at before? This was the test we just did. Yeah, the write speed went up maybe just a little bit. The 4 is it kilobit? I can't read it. Those numbers on one side, both sides are doing us a little bit better. Third option down, those numbers are a little bit better. Quite a bit better, actually. And on the last row, they're going to be pretty much identical on there, that last test. Yeah. So that's just firmware and drivers between the left side and the right side. You'll see drivers don't really make that big of a difference. The firmware update's important to keep the life of the drive healthy and to maintain any compatibility with OS upgrades and driver updates that the firmware updates may be addressing. Not all manufacturers have firmware updates on SSDs. Thanks Jimmy. I don't think I've seen a firmware update on an ADATA drive. So apparently they don't need them. I don't know. Samsung seems to have a lot of them. Let me go back to the RAID configuration. One more time, let's take a look at what the RAID numbers were. There's our RAID numbers right there. So these numbers are bigger when it's out of RAID. These numbers are bigger out of RAID. These numbers are bigger out of RAID. This number is bigger out of RAID, though not by much. And the write, it's really all we're seeing here is sequential writes are improved by 33%. Nothing else is improved. And you saw the hassle it was to go through all those different BIOS changes, 4 different settings we had to adjust in the BIOS, along with creating the RAID. And every time we update the BIOS, we will have to redo that and remember how to do it, or the system will not boot. The Samsung Magician software will not work. We will not be able to apply any firmware updates to the drives. Is that worth it? I don't think it is. I really don't think it's worth it. So I'm going to just leave this. I don't think I need to record this at all. Let's do one other thing, and let's see how well this cooler is working, because this system is dead quiet, which is really nice. So let's go under PC testing software, and let's grab the hardware monitor software. Whoops. Let's just drag that out. And let's drag out Prime 95. Let's close that. Let's bring up the hardware monitor. Start that. Close that. Close that. And then let's bring up Prime 95 and let's hammer the heck out of the CPU. Let's go 100% on all the cores. And let's see what kind of temps we get after about 15 minutes. And then I think that's going to wrap up the video. So here we're looking at the current temps, our minimum temps, and our maximum temps. We're going to focus in on this area right in here, and particularly on this right side right here. This is an extreme test. Pretty unusual to ever see a user run all the cores at 100%. And when that usually happens, it happens for brief moments, not continuously for as long as I am going to do it. So I want you to bear that in mind. This is pretty extreme. And then we can kind of measure that after, what is it? 5:49. We'll let it go till 6. We'll let it go for 11 minutes and we'll see where our temps are at. I still have the software to load for the liquid cooler, but I don't want to do that yet until I talk to the end user and find out if he wants to do RAID 0 or not, because I may end up having to reinstall everything again. But as you can see, it's not a big deal to reinstall Windows like it used to be, especially on a modern system that's this fast. And now that I know how to configure the RAID in the BIOS, I'm going to remake the video. I'll probably do it offline instead of live, just to record that for my own sake, for my own sanity. Because it's a matter of time before I see another system and I'll forget everything that happened because I will have fixed countless other problems that had to be resolved. And so I'm just going to make it for my own purposes. I don't want to rewatch me arguing with viewers that are just making guesses. That's frustrating. It's not proud of that. I don't like it. It's very distracting and it takes away from the lesson. So I'm going to focus a whole new video. Now that I know how to do it, we'll get right to the gist of it, make it a short, quick tips video just on configuring RAID 0 on a Gigabyte Z370 Intel-based board. And hopefully people will find that useful. I should include a disclaimer that it's probably pointless to do it, given the performance numbers. And I'll include that information in that video as well. So that'll be the good that comes out of this. I don't know if this will be available after broadcast. I don't like, when the videos, when I allow the viewers to distract me, those aren't videos I want to release and have recorded for everybody to watch and use against me because they don't like the way I handled it. But I get so frustrated, guys. I'm just trying to fix a problem. It's so frustrating. So let's just take a look at what we've got here on our temps. How are we doing? Still sitting in the 50s. That's good so far. So far, so good. Like to see it stay under 80. Are the Samsung updates important for SATA drives or NVMe? They're important. The companies don't release updates for fun. When a company spends the money for the research, the development, the programming, the testing, and then they pay for the bandwidth for you to get that update, it's not there because it's something to do. It's critical. And it doesn't matter, a drive is a drive, whether it's NVMe or SATA or RAID. These updates are released for a reason. And for you to think that it doesn't apply to you is silliness. Firmware updates specifically on solid state drives are critical, absolutely critical that you have those. If performance and reliability is important. If you don't care about performance and reliability, then you can ignore it. But I've never met anybody that said, I don't care about performance and reliability. And it's free. It's not like they're doing it to make money. It's not like it's optional. The manufacturer felt it was critical, and they went through that expense to make it available to you. And it applies equally whether it's a SATA drive, an NVMe drive, regardless. You typically don't get firmware updates on a mechanical hard drive. I've never applied a firmware update on one. I've seen them available. It's very complicated to update a hard drive firmware. So I don't recommend that. But on a solid state drive, it can make a huge, vast improvement in the performance of the drive, as well as the reliability of the drive. Does anyone make an M2 cloner in order to convert from a traditional hard drive to M2? There's no difference. You would use Acronis or Clonezilla or any other cloning software to go from any drive to any drive, whether it's USB, SATA, M.2, NVMe, flash drive, it doesn't matter. It's all storage. So you don't have to do anything special or different. Computer sees storage as storage, and the cloning software sees storage as storage. You can copy from any storage device to any other storage device. Now, some older cloning software may not have the necessary drivers to see the latest, NVMe protocol drives, but that's a limitation of the software drivers. That's not a limitation of the hardware. There's a lot of good info in this video, Carrie. It'd be a shame not to publish it because of a few bad eggs. So the reason I don't want to publish it isn't because of the bad eggs. People were well-intentioned. I just wasn't in the mood for it today, and I didn't handle it the best way. So it's really about me. I don't want myself being displayed that way in an archive video for people to watch and go, wow, this guy really came down hard on those people. Well, yes, I came down hard on him because I'm trying to fix a problem. I'm working here. I'm trying to get a job done. I have a customer waiting. And, what am I supposed to do? All these things are happening in chat, and I want it to stop. I want that to stop. I guess I could stop looking at it, but I was hoping that somebody had an answer based on experience, so they were going to say, here, I've done this before, and here's how I did it. That's all I wanted. That's all I wanted. So because of that, the way it went down and the way I reacted to it, I would rather not keep the video. This will just be for just you guys watching live, just a little treat for you guys. And then I will remake the video, like I said, as a quick tips video. And hopefully we've all moved on from there. And I got rid of a couple of people that were just jerks. So I won't have to deal with those people in the future. But you see this all the time on the internet. You'll see people fighting with each other, trying to help somebody. And you'll often find that the person who asked the question never comes back into that thread ever again. Not to say thank you, not to say it worked. There could be a message that says, how do I do this? And then below that could be 100 replies in 24 hours. And it starts with, you should try this. And then, oh, don't listen to that person. Will you shut up? Will you shut up? And then the person who asked the question is totally forgotten about. And then someone else jumps in and says, why don't you guys both shut up? And it just 100 messages later. And then if I see that, I'll usually jump in and go, did anybody notice that the person who asked the question has not responded to any of you? That's messed up. That's a messed up psychological problem that happens on the internet due to the fact that human beings have not evolved to the point, in general, to communicate effectively using this platform. And it results in people with the best of intentions wanting to kill somebody. Like, oh my God, I'm so angry at that person. It's so stupid. And all because they were all just trying to help. They laugh because it's so preposterously ridiculous and stupid. All right, we're at 70 degrees maximum temp so far. We've been running now about 8 minutes. Let's let it keep running. I think I'm going to give it the full 15 minutes, and then we're going to wrap it up. So we're halfway through the test, and then the video will be wrapped up. Joey says the chat box is usually never friendly in most places. This channel has a very good audience compared to others by far. Well, thank you, and that's what I'm going for here, right? I want everybody to be kind to each other, and when I ask people to stop and they don't, that's when we run into a problem. When I say stop guessing, if you know the answer, tell me. If you don't know the answer, stop your guessing. And when the guessing keeps happening, and I'm not being heard, it's really offensive. Again, you got to think of a teacher in a classroom. How would the teacher react if a student did that? And that's what I see all the time with comments. Your video's too long. Well, do you go to class and say, teacher, your class is too long? You talk too much. Do you tell your teacher in a classroom you talk? That's the teacher's job. I don't have time for that. Well, you don't have time for an education? Fine, go away. What do I care? So the best expression or analogy I can use is just like a teacher in a classroom, and disruptive students distracting or creating an obstacle between the teaching lesson is frustrating when it's important, when you feel like what you're trying to convey is important. I have to learn to meditate. But the gist of the video here is I now know how to configure the RAID on this gigabyte board. And I think it'll be a more useful video to anybody looking for that information, to just get right to the point. And that's why I will remake the video. I think I'll do it offline. I can't do it today. The sun's already gone down. It's already too dark. But I'll remake it. And I have to talk to the owner and figure out if he wants to go RAID 0 or not. But in the meantime, well, I've got the system here. I will make that video, and I'll throw the different numbers up, the performance numbers, to just explain what you can expect if you want to go through this trouble, what the risks are, and what the benefits are. It seems like the risks far outweigh the benefits in this particular configuration scenario. In my opinion, I wouldn't do it. Okay, we've been on, what, about 9 minutes now. What's my maximum temp? Still no more than, we haven't broken 70 degrees centigrade, and the system's really nice and quiet. Those Noctua fans were a nice upgrade to the cooler. I definitely can recommend that safely. I thought that the little rubber pads were wasteful and unnecessary. But apart from that, a good upgrade. If you're running a liquid cooler now and you're using the stock fans, upgrading to Noctua fans would probably result in better airflow and a quieter system. Probably. Colin says it's 2 a.m. in England. It's time to say goodnight. Hey, Colin, always good to see you. Thank you, my friend. Thanks for joining. Christoph says you could just do a voiceover and cut the parts out. You know what, Christoph, for as much effort as that is, it's just a lot easier for me to shoot the whole thing again. Honestly, editing is tough. Let's see. Oh, it just quieted down. Why did it quiet down? Let's see. What's our temps at? Still haven't broken 70. That's fantastic. You know, the chip we're using is the 8086K, and it does run hot. So far, I think that's the most effective cooling solution for the 8086K. If we look back at other videos, I've got at least 6 other videos with 8086Ks, typically using Cooler Master Hyper 212 EVO tower coolers. And those run exceptionally well. For 30 bucks, it can't be beat. But we're going to be somewhere in the 80s on this test. With this cooler, which is quite a bit more money, it's about 3 times or 4 times more money. And then when you add on the nocturnal fans, which adds another $40, $45, $50 into that. But it does show you do get what you pay for. We clearly are running about 10 degrees Celsius cooler. So if you're intending to overclock the machine, that H115i is the way to go. It fits really well. There's room for the RAM. It doesn't hit the RAM at all. And it fits really well in the NZXT case. I would have gone with like a Kraken X62, but I think this actually performs better than that, surprisingly. So that's good to see. Remember, I was concerned because this water block is awfully thin. I wasn't quite sure if that was going to relate to poorer performance or a louder pump motor. But no, it's dead silent. I mean, it's not dead silent. I can hear the fans. Let me see if I can move the microphone in there. They're just, I mean, they're so quiet. I bet the microphone can't even pick it up. It would be like so amplified for you to hear it. It wouldn't be realistic to what I'm hearing, which is a very faint fan noise, very faint. 2 more minutes, this test will be over. That'll be 15 minutes at 100% on all 6 cores, and not even breaking 70 degrees centigrade. That is absolutely impressive. Much more so than the RAID. Winston says, I'll get my Canadian Coke tomorrow. That's fantastic. Thank you, Winston. If you delit it, you'll see another 10 degrees centigrade. Yeah, and if you delit it, you'll spend another couple $100 in the process and potentially break your CPU. So, you know what? I can't condone that. I think that's a foolish waste of money. But yes, if you do it right, you will see a decrease in the temps. But that's more important to somebody really trying to overclock the heck out of it. I wouldn't do it. Okay, we're almost there. 1 more minute. I think we're pretty much at our, nothing's really changed. It's still staying 70 degrees centigrade, maximum temp. Like I say, I think that's the coolest I've seen an 8086K run on this test, ever. So note to self. And the RGB is a nice touch. It matches the RAM and the motherboard and the case. And it's got a big window's going to go here, and that's always ideal, much more so than a tower cooler, which doesn't look very good through the window. That's much more attractive. So it's the H115i Pro. So I'm going to go ahead and stop the test because it's been running 15, has it been 15 minutes? Yeah, close enough. So let's go to the test here and we'll hit stop. And then again, watch how quickly the temperatures drop. Watch these temps. Look at how fast they go. They're almost practically half of what they were seconds ago. So that's how fast the CPU can heat up. It happens instantaneously, and that's why you do not want to start a system up without a cooler. Or if you do, it better just be for like 2 seconds. Certainly not more than 10 seconds, because you could fry the CPU. Well, CPU should throttle itself down, but it's a dangerous game to play, and you just shouldn't play it. That's my opinion. Okay, well, that's going to wrap it up for this video. Thank you guys so much for joining me. Lisa, Carrie's confused. He likes RGB. I don't like RGB. I think RGB is a complete waste of money. I would not invest in RGB myself, nor would I recommend it. However, when I'm looking at the system and I'm looking what the customer is trying to achieve, I think the customers made a good choice with this cooler. This was the customer's selection of parts, not mine. although he did take my advice on the motherboard. But otherwise, the customer selected all these parts. The customer did a very good job. And if this was the customer's goal, I would say that he has not only met that goal, but even exceeded it with how well everything goes together. Seems like it was all made to go together. This has nothing to do with whether or not I would buy it. You're confusing those two things. And then with the Threadripper build, that's got RGB because that's what you guys, we said, let's build something for fun. It's just for fun. When I build systems for people, it's usually people they want the system to run well. It's usually under a desk. They're not looking at it. They don't want to spend unnecessary money for lights for something they don't care about. So I'm used to dealing both with home users and business users that want the most amount of computing for their money, and they don't want to spend more than they have to. They don't care about the lights. They don't care about case windows. They don't care about any of that. They just want a fast, reliable computer that's going to last them a long time and get their money's worth out of the machine. They don't necessarily want the fastest computer. They want a good computer, best bang for the buck, So they don't want the cheapest thing they're going to have to replace next year or 2 years from now. They don't want the most expensive thing that depreciates to half its value next year. They want that middle of the road, best bang for the buck machine. But for the clients who do want the RGB, I'm happy to help them achieve whatever their goals are, right? It's all about what the customer wants here. And I do believe that the RGB thing is a fad. I think this will look ridiculous in 10 years. If I show you this system 10 years from now, I think it's gonna be like somebody showing you your high school yearbook photo. And you're gonna be like, oh my God, don't show me that, that's embarrassing. That's assuming you didn't graduate from high school last year. I'm saying, 10, 15 years down the road, you look at your high school yearbook photo, look at the clothes you were wearing, look at the way your hair was, compare it to how you are now. Most people find that to be embarrassing. And I think that's what's going to happen with the RGB craze. That's my opinion based on my life's experience. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe this is just the beginning. Maybe we're just going to all get light bulbs that have computers built into them. I don't know. But be that as it may, thank you guys for joining me today. And I will look forward to seeing you again soon. I don't know if I'm broadcasting tomorrow or not, but I do have some other little quick tips videos in the work that my sister's working on, and those will be released periodically as she gets them completed. So again, to all the contributors, to all the mods, thank you guys so much. For everybody who's kind and courteous, who's joined in the video today, thank you guys so much for that. I really appreciate the building of a supportive community, and I will be sure to, hold on, wait a minute, what's this say? Who chose a gigabyte board? I recommended the gigabyte board. Customer ultimately made the decision. Okay, I think I got all the comments. So Patrick, Rusa, Christoph, Ash, Superman, G, Michael C, Perry Dubs, Bendicure, Paul Baxter, Gear, Slotsvik, Alej Depej, Donnie Seeger, Mills 6457, Colin Hilton, Geo Sam, Winston, Ang Lu, Magni Johansson. Thank you guys so much. All the people you see in blue. Really appreciate your support today, and I will see you all again very, very soon. And for everybody, like I said, for watching and participating, thank you guys so much. And if I'm not here tomorrow, I'll definitely be back on Monday. I will try to get here tomorrow. Usually when I go live, it's between 1 p.m. to 5 p.m. Pacific time. And hopefully in the new year, I'll be able to schedule at least 2 days a week that you can count on. So you don't have to wonder, when am I going to go live? I'm working towards that. We're this close. We're getting there. All right, guys. Thanks again for watching. I'll see you all very, very soon. Until then, bye for now.